Welcome to The Source, where we combine the headlines with in-depth conversations with the newsmakers themselves. I'm Pinky Webb. Today on the program, more ayuda to come. A proposed stimulus package aims to provide cash aid to all Filipinos affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, regardless of their social status. As the country continues to see a downtrend in new coronavirus cases, is it finally time to ease lockdown measures in Metro Manila? And President Duterte hails Health Secretary Francisco Duque as the hero of the country's pandemic response. But some lawmakers believe otherwise. Marikina 2nd District Representative Stella Quimbo joins us live. All Filipinos, regardless of social status, will be entitled to a new set of cash aid under a proposed stimulus package. The House Ways and Means Committee approved the Bayanihan 3 bill. It seeks a budget of 405.6 billion pesos to help Filipinos affected by the pandemic. The measure ensures no Filipino is deprived of financial assistance. Plenary debates on the proposed package are expected to begin when Congress resumes session on May 17. Let's go straight to the source of the story. We have Marikina 2nd District Representative Stella Quimbo. Congresswoman Quimbo, it's good to finally have you on the show. Welcome to the source.
Good morning, Pinky, and thanks for having me.
So it's the House Committee on Economic Affairs, it's the Social Services, and very recently the Ways and Means Committee already approving the Bayanihan 3 measure. So let's just find out first what's next after this.
Well, it will have to go through the Committee on Appropriations for approval because clearly this is an appropriations bill. And then it will return to the Mother Committee for the approval of the committee report. And then at that point, the plenary debates can begin. So hopefully by the time we resume on May 17, then plenary debates can happen.
I see. We're looking at 405.6 billion pesos. I guess it's good to find out where will this money be sourced from?
So Pinky, this is largely an ayuda bill. A big chunk of that 405.6 billion will go to ayuda. 216 billion to be exact is our base ayuda, meaning it's the 1,000 per head. It's a 1,000 per Filipino for 2 tranches. So 108 million Filipinos times 1,000 each. So that's 108 billion for the first tranche. And then after 3 months, hopefully the second tranche, another 108 billion. There are other types of assistance programs. So basically, over and above your base ayuda, you can be entitled to additional ayuda depending on your needs. So for example, there is ayuda that would be specific for those with COVID. So you would get an additional 5 to 10,000 pesos just in case anyone in your family gets COVID. There's also ayuda for people who would lose their jobs. So under the Tupad program of DOLE, there's about 5,000 pesos unemployment assistance. There would also be medical assistance for indigent patients.
Yeah.
And assistance for agri-fishery. So as we all know, many of our hog raisers are affected by the African swine flu. So there is also a special assistance program for them.
Actually, madami po siya, Congresswoman. I looked into each one of them. We'll show them again a little later on. But let's start first with what is very siguro certain. Kasi nga, every Filipino, 108 Filipinos will get 1,000 pesos on the first tranche and another 1,000 pesos, you said, after 3 months on the second tranche. So we're all entitled basically to 2,000 pesos each. Kaya lumalabas po yun halos kalahati na nung stimulus package na 405 billion pesos kasi lumalabas po 216 billion pesos. I just wanted to find out from you why the need to give, sabi nga nila hindi ho ba, sana all. Why the need to give each and every Filipino 2,000 pesos?
Well, first of all, Pinky, the pandemic affected everyone. Everyone, regardless of age, regardless of income status, we all got affected. And in fact, if you look at our hunger ratings, ang laki ng tinaas. Before the pandemic levels, hunger rating was something like 8.8%. And the quarter after the pandemic started, umakyat siya to, I think, 16%. And then it went to a high of 30% on the third quarter of 2020. In other words, Pinky, katulad ng sinasabi na marami, kung hindi ka man mamatay sa COVID, baka naman
Mamamatay ka sa
ang
gutom.
ikamatay mo. So that's really where we are at this point. Many of our kababayans really need help. Hunger is a very basic problem. So that's the reason for why Speaker Velasco pushed this. And as you know, if you recall the SAP under Bayanihan 1 and Bayanihan 2, the two tranches under Bayanihan 1, ang naging basic problem doon, Pinky, is that although the law said 75% of the households would be entitled to 8,000 pesos per tranche, nahirapan tayo dahil wala naman tayong listahan ng eligible beneficiaries. And many people were saying, why was I not included in the list when in fact I need help? And so Speaker Velasco said, let's simplify this. Let's allot a budget for every single Filipino, which means if you're a family of 5, regardless of age, you would be entitled to 5,000 pesos. And the average family size is about 5.2. So more or less on the average, we should be expecting about 10,000 pesos for the two tranches. But of course, Pinky, as we know, the lower income families, in fact, the poorest family would have about a family size of 6. No, whereas the richest families would have an average family size of 3. So more or less, nakikita natin na mas ina-expect ng ating mga mahihirap na kababayan na halos doble ang kanilang entitlement to ayuda compared to the rich ones.
Would you call that an equitable distribution of this fund?
Sorry, Pinky, can you repeat that?
Would you describe that? I understand what you're saying, no, Congresswoman. Kasi kapag yung medyo mas less fortunate ka, 6 hanggang 8 yung anak mo, would you say this would be an equitable distribution of the funds? Because that was and still remains to be a major problem. Marami po kasi nagtatanong, bakit ako hindi kasali?
Tama po. So again, we still don't have a national ID system. So that's a big constraint that we are working around. And so again, but it's a good thing that the census is coming out soon. So we will have a new listing of Filipinos, and that's very timely. So that could be the basis for listing beneficiaries under this Sana All Ayuda program.
So it's clear. Each and every one of us, lahat ng Pilipino makakatanggap ng 2,000 pesos, 1,000 first tranche, 1,000 yung next tranche. Congresswoman, will you be able to tell us paano makukuha itong perang ito?
Well, again, right now the way it's written in the bill is it's in very general terms. Usually yung implementation details are really issued by the implementing agency, in this case, the DSWD. Pero sa tingin ko dito, Pinky, hindi tayo malalayo sa SAP implementation. It's going to be the 4th time that we'll be distributing this kind of an ayuda. So sana naman, on the 4th time around, marami na tayong natutunan. It's going to be a much improved version. Basically, ang nangyayari dyan is the funds are downloaded to the LGUs. Pero ang sa tingin kong pwedeng innovation for this ayuda program is that the listing of beneficiaries can be done at the barangay level. Kasi ang mga barangay captains naman natin, kilala nila ang mga tao sa kanilang mga lugar. They can easily validate a list that came from the census. So tingin ko that's probably something that can be considered as an innovation para mapabilis, because as we know, ang naging problema talaga ng SAP is in the identification of beneficiaries. Yeah.
Tsaka hindi ho ba, Congressman, magkaiba yung listahan ng LGU at magkaiba din dun sa listahan ng DSW, excuse me, D. Yun po ang isa sa mga naging problema doon sa pamamahagi ng SAP. Okay, I do understand, of course, the fine print will be up to the implementing agency. So that's good news kung maipasa po ito. Let's go to the other areas, no, madami kasi merong for displaced workers, for wage subsidy, for government nutrition program. I want to go to what you said a while ago. Sabi mo, kapag maging COVID positive ka, tama ho ba, magkakaroon ka pa ng additional. Can you tell us more about that para maisa-isa po natin?
Well, una sa lahat, ang rationale dyan is that kapag may COVID ka or yung isang family member mo may COVID, minsan kahit na hindi ka sure kung meron ka, lalabas ka pa rin sa bahay dahil kailangan mo talagang magtrabaho para pakainin ng iyong pamilya. So this is one way to be able to assure our kababayans that if you have COVID, you can stay at home because government can help you or can provide you with your basic needs. So yan ang problema eh. Siyempre, no, dahil dala ng gutom, kahit na sinabi sa atin ng gobyerno na stay at home, no, talagang kailangan mo lumabas ng bahay para kumita. So by giving them an amount, 10,000 pesos, that should be some form of help, no, to allow you to comply with the minimum health standard. So that's a rationale. And then again, so you get additional ayuda of at most 10,000 pesos. So again, Pinky, the philosophy or the design of this bill is that, again, you have a base ayuda, no, 1,000 per head. And on top of that, you get assistance according to your needs, right? So obviously, having COVID is one need. Losing a job is another kind of need. Working in an MSME, that's probably going to trigger also needs, additional needs, because as we know, very vulnerable ang MSMEs natin. So even if you're currently employed in an MSME, you still face the risk of losing your job. So kailangan din natin tulungan ng MSMEs.
At yan po yung driver ng ating economy, the MSMEs. Congresswoman, we need to take a very short break. The Source will be right back. You're watching The Source on CNN Philippines. Our guest today, Marikina 2nd District Representative, Congresswoman Stella Quimbo. Congresswoman, I'm looking at the other big amounts here, no? So, pinakamalaki yung ayuda for all. Tapos sumunod po, itatabi ko po muna yung pension for retired military and police is for the agri-fishery sector. That's 30 billion pesos. Can we briefly talk about that, please?
So again, one of the biggest problems apart from the contraction of our economy is inflation. No, and the big source of food inflation is really the increase in pork prices. So alam natin na dahil tumaas ang presyo ng baboy is because of problems like ASF and the series of typhoons that happened last year. So that wiped out a big number of the swine population. And so clearly, this is our farmers, particularly our hog raisers, really need assistance. So this is really to augment the working capital. Pinky, if your pigs would die one day, that's as if your entire working capital got dissipated. So we need to provide a way to give them cash assistance. So that's the ratio for the 30 billion.
Marami pa rin po, no? But I want to go to these two. There is a wage subsidy of 20 billion and there is 25 billion for displaced workers. Kasi pag-usapan po natin yung wage subsidy, hindi ho ba there is this call for to give 8,000 pesos per month. Paano ho natin i-differentiate si 20 billion on wage subsidy and 25 billion for displaced workers?
All right, so we need to provide help for two kinds of workers. Those that obviously lost their jobs, no, and so that would be the Tupad program under DOLE, and that's been a program that's been running for many years now. It's very successful. It's one of those programs under Bayanihan too that was able to utilize the appropriations quite well. But more importantly, yung hindi natin or madalas natin ma-ignore would be those that are currently employed. They also need help. No? Why? Particularly those that are employed by the MSMEs. No? So ang problema sa MSMEs, because they're very small, they have very limited capacity to cope with economic shocks. No? So halimbawa, wala silang access to loans. wala silang access to things like insurance. So talagang they're very vulnerable. So in the same way, kapag vulnerable ang business, ang unang matatamaan dyan, yung mga workers. So by providing a wage subsidy to MSMEs, parang mo na rin tinutulungan yung owner ng MSME. Diba?
Yes.
Kasi kapag sinasagot ng gobyerno halimbawa ang pasweldo for 1 month, then the owner of the MSME can use his payroll funds for something else. No?
Right.
Hopefully like additional investments, etc. So that's the rationale
Right.
naman for the wage subsidy. And under Bayanihan 1, one of the most successful assistance programs is the small business wage subsidy program, which was implemented by both the DOF and the SSS. So what Speaker Velasco said was, since it was fairly successful, why don't we just replicate this? Although it's a smaller amount, kasi under Bayanihan 1, I believe about 52 billion pesos were disbursed for that. In this case ngayon, we're only looking at about 20 billion.
20 billion. So how much would be the subsidy per worker?
Well, again, we'll have to wait for the implementing rules that will be issued by SSS and DOF. Pero ang natatandaan ko dyan, that was about 8,000 pesos.
Yes.
But again, because it's a smaller total today, it's 20 billion compared to 52 billion under Bayanihan 1. There's going to be some rationalizing that's going to happen. No, ang gagawin ba nila is pipiliin nila yung pinaka-vulnerable, so kalahati lang nung nakatanggap under Bayanihan 1, or same number of MSMEs pero kalahati na lang ang matatanggap. That's something that the implementing agencies will have to decide on.
I see. Okay. So there's also something here, Congresswoman, yung meron pang relief programs for LGUs at 5 billion. But there is a government nutrition program at 10 billion. What is this about?
So again, we go back to the basic philosophy that really now the main problem that we need to address is hunger. And there are existing government programs that precisely address hunger, particularly for school children. So ito yung feeding programs ng elementary school children which are in place. I think ang ginagawa ngayon is hinahatid yung pagkain sa mga bata. As we know, wala pa tayong face-to-face classes. So this 10 billion is for that. And there's also another one that also targets mothers. So it's both children and mothers.
And because you were also talking about children and students, this is also going to be quite interesting. The 5.6 billion for the DepEd. So from what I read, it's for the purchase of laptops for teachers and even allowance on mobile and internet.
Yes, that's correct. So it would seem that face-to-face classes will be further delayed. No? Hindi pa natin talaga mapapabalik ang mga bata. So right now, we have to make sure that flexible learning works. And as we know, many are complaining that the two biggest constraints to flexible learning is really internet connection, and number two, the lack of gadgets. So this is a way to address those two obstacles to having a successful flexible learning system.
And I just want to bring this in. There's also 400 million pesos for the testing of OFWs who will be arriving in the country. Just quickly, there are questions, of course, bakit daw nasama yung pension for retired military and police? And this is a lot. This is 54 billion pesos. Kasi, Congresswoman, of course, when we talk about the Bayanihan 3, you'd think that it should address unemployment, hunger, and other measures to mitigate this crisis.
Well, okay, first of all, this was a request of the DBM. So this amount was admittedly not in any of the original 6 bills that were consolidated under the existing substitute bill that was recently approved in the various committees. But then during our TWG hearings, this was one request from the DBM that came up. And when we thought about it some more, well, first of all, it's something that is really due to our uniformed personnel. As we know, the pension payments are already in arrears. So utang na natin ito sa mga sundalo. And unfortunately, in 2020, a big portion of their budget got cut.
Was slashed.
So
Yeah.
kailangan talaga natin i-restore ito. And again, when we thought about it some more, obviously, ang sundalo natin are also frontliners. And under Bayanihan 1, Bayanihan 2, and even under Bayanihan 3, of course, hindi natin kakalimutan ang ating medical frontliners. There are provisions for protection as well as compensation, particularly for their hazard pay. This is for medical frontliners. Pero under Bayanihan 1 and Bayanihan 2, there was really nothing for our soldiers. And but they're very important. And as they work the front line, we have to be sure also that their spirit, their morale is high. Yeah. And ang hirap naman, Pinky, kapag hirap ka na nga sa trabaho mo, you face a lot of risks. Tapos iisipin mo pa na kapag nag-retire ka, baka hindi ka pabayaran. So we thought that kailangan din natin itong tugunan. So by putting in the amount that is needed to pay the pension arrears.
Just two more questions on the Bayanihan 3. What kind of support are you getting from the Senate? Are there sticky issues or challenging issues between the House possibly and the Senate? And would you know if the president would certify this as urgent, because this is something that the people would need as soon as possible?
Well, at this point, so Speaker Velasco has been obviously in touch with the economic managers kasi ang problema dito talaga, Pinky, it's not really, I don't think there's any disagreement as to the need for ayuda, as to the need to address hunger. We are all in agreement. Ang problema lang talaga dito is really to find clear sources of funds. And sa tingin ko, baka yun lang talaga yung dahilan kung bakit hindi pa nasa-certify urgent. And at this point, as we speak, our economic managers are really helping us look for funds. So tingin ko, as soon as the fund sources can be identified, palagay ko baka pwedeng makonsider na i-certify urgent. But anyway, at any rate, hindi naman tayo tumitigil sa trabaho. Kahit na naka-recess tayo, we continue to have committee hearings. So kahit na normal process lang ang gamitin dito, palagay ko ma-approve naman siya in a timely manner.
Again, we need to take another short break, Congresswoman. We'll be right back. You're watching The Source on CNN Philippines. I'm Pinky Webb. Our guest today, Marikina 2nd District Representative Stella Quimbo. Congresswoman, just one last topic. So NEDA is also already saying that we need to open up the economy more, or possibly even increase capacity of those industries that have been recently opened, because we're still on MECQ until May 14. What kind of scenario are you looking at post May 14? Is it really time to open up, to have more people, to spur the economy, generate more jobs, or kailan ho ba talaga calibrated pa rin talaga yung response, because the cases, while they're going down, they're still high?
Well, it seems to be that in the past, we were always told to choose between lives or livelihood, diba? So ngayon na tumataas ang COVID cases, and sinasabi sa atin, okay, let's now choose lives and stay at home first, lock down the entire economy, in which case, ang laki talaga ng impact on our GDP. But I think, Pinky, there are ways by which you can actually do both. You can actually address the health concerns at the same time. You can help speed up economic recovery by way of considering other ways, such as pwede naman tayong hindi mag-lockdown, but at the same time, we can control the transmissions by, for example, having very, very granular lockdowns, meaning at the household level. Meaning kahit na hindi na tayo naka-MECQ, pwede nang lumabas, pwede nang magtrabaho, pwede nang i-continue to operate ang business. But those families or those households na merong at least one family member na may COVID, pwede natin sabihin na stay at home muna kayong lahat. Kahit na isa lang ang siguradong may COVID, lahat na lang stay at home, and don't worry, the government will provide you your needs. So baka
Yeah.
pwedeng ganun eh. If you can, kasi there are many places, Pinky, na COVID-free naman eh. No? So for example, there are many barangays, for example, in a city that has many cases, there are many barangays that continue to be COVID-free. So pwede naman yun, you can just let them go. Ang problema kasi sa MECQ or ECQ, it's malawakan. Talagang everybody stays at home even if wala naman COVID sa lugar. So by making the lockdown policy very granular to the household level, pwedeng ipagsabay ang controlling COVID cases and at the same time beginning economic recovery by opening up the economy.
That's one proposal that really needs to be considered because you nip it in the bud. Pagka may isa doon sa bahay pa lang, mag-lockdown na kayo sa bahay. Tapos ang importante, as you mentioned, Congresswoman, kailangan talaga may ayuda. Then you don't affect the whole barangay or the whole city or eventually the whole NCR or even the NCR plus bubble. All right, but Congresswoman, I'd like to thank you for your time. Maraming salamat po for joining us here on The Source. I hope to speak to you again.
Thanks, Pinky. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Congresswoman Stella Quimbo, and thank you for joining us here on The Source. I'm Pinky Webb. You're watching CNN Philippines.